This is Coffee Chat, Redefining the Empty Nest. Here are your hosts, Lisa McGrath and Renee Lowry.
Hi, thank you for joining us for Coffee Chat, Redefining the Empty Nest. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Renee.
And today we're so lucky. We are bringing on a new guest, Torin, to talk about having an empty nest. And Torin has a lovely story that shares a different perspective than Renee and I have. So Torin, welcome to Coffee Chat.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I am so honored and I'm just so grateful to be here. I'm really excited.
Yeah,
Yay.
we are excited. So
we are glad to have you here too. Why don't you just take a couple of minutes and fill us in, tell us about your family, your children, and take a few minutes to brag, because we all like to talk and brag about our kids. So have some fun. Let us know who your kids are. What's going on with you?
Well, okay, I'll take a few minutes because I could talk about my kids all day. And a little bit about me is I'm singer-songwriter Torin Floyd. I'm from Pasadena, California, by way of Los Angeles. And I'm just a lover of life. And my kids are four amazing, special human beings that I share with my best friend and her mom. And my unique story of parenthood or guardianship, I like to think of myself as the perfect godfather or the perfect fairy god guardian. And my journey begins at 16 with my first godson being born, and I actually being there for his mother. And then 2 months later, his grandmother had his aunt. And so I was the Mr. Pick him up from the C-section. I became the Mr. Sonogram man, and I completely fell in love with my first experience. And then 2 years later, my best friend had her daughter, and her name is Zai. And she was the most precious, beautiful little girl that I ever got to experience. And that situation made me the man I am today because I was actually there for her. And I got to cut the umbilical cord and be there pulling her out and taking her home. And from that moment, I was 18. And so from that moment, I was like, okay, you know what? This is life. And, I love them so much. So for from 18 to about 28, it was just me helping them out every single day and being there. And we had so much fun. Oh my gosh, we had so much fun. As a singer-songwriter, I put them in my music videos. They were always there as key inspiration. I just love my kids. Like the boy is Kay, their auntie is Abby, and then you have little Zai, and then there was a little baby Kai, and they just really changed my life. They're so funny. They're so immaculate. They have huge personalities, and I loved their personalities. Zai loves to sing and dance. So I used to take her to dance class. I would let her sing on my demos. Abby is such a beautiful, smart, quiet child. So I'm always trying to pull her out of her shell, which is good for me because it taught me how to talk to people and deal with people in different dynamics. And the boy K, he's such a strong young man. And it was such a joy raising boys and girls because I realized that I was watching humanity in their most purest form. And I never wanted to stifle their creativity or their personality. I always wanted them to be the best. And I know it's like, but you were 18, you were 25, but it's like, no. When you know you are the best, you can bring the best out of people, and then you guys can support each other's bestness. And I think with children, it's very important to see their best and pull it out of them by being your best self. So by the time little Kai came, it was like easy We almost had him on the bathroom floor, and I was really ready for that, but we got to the hospital. He was an amazing, he's such a smart baby. And it was such a joy instilling life and light into them. And they gave me so much. And I could gush about them all day.
I love your enthusiasm. Oh, I love it. Especially and here's the thing that we forget sometimes. Each child is an individual and they do have their own personalities. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that. That's awesome. And it's just, yeah, I love the enthusiasm.
Thank you.
Yes. You one point in time you mentioned something about how teaching that confidence gave you more confidence, and that is so true with people in general. Anytime you teach something that you're not very good at to someone who's not as good as you are, even, it does give you that added confidence and it builds your skill in the process. So that's great. That's a wonderful lesson to share. I love that. Thank you. Yeah. So you have these little kids still, but you don't live with them, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So you have an empty nest kind of by proxy. Yeah.
Yes, by proxy. Unfortunately, life, fortunately, life can be a really tricky thing, especially in this sort of media warped society. And honestly, I used to think, but now I know, and I can say this with full love, but we don't necessarily know how to appropriately love ourselves and be loved. So my friendship with my best friend since I was 5, and ended over an inability to communicate maturely. And you know knowing me, I know when people see this, the unspoken will speak volumes, because culturally we deal with things that are not really real, but we make them real. And so it makes everything else take a sidestep. So I am an empty nester, and because in my hometown, I am known as Torin the Magnificent, not to brag, but to say what people call me, because when people realize everything that I do and then they see me with these kids, and I was to pick them up, drop them off, stay at the school, talk to the teachers, bring them to my videos, my performances. They've been to the radio. They've been places. So when I look at things like that, people be like, "Where's your kids? Was that your wife? Was that your girlfriend?" So I tell people, I went through a conscious uncoupling, or I went through a spiritual divorce, because that is what it feels like. And I still have communication with the children through social media, which I'm grateful for. But that's something that I always told them, if anything happens, we used to practice fire drills and earthquake drills, and the kidnapper at home, and be like, what do we do if something happens? But that was one of the things that I hated, that I felt like I had to do it, but I felt like if I don't, I have to prepare them for whatever happens, because I know that they're using everything that I taught them. But I did tell them, I said, hey, get a Cash App, get an Instagram, and once a month, respectfully, let's keep in contact, because I'm kind of all they ever
So
need.
there's a word that you used several times, communication. And so even though you did this conscious uncoupling, it's communication. And a lot of times in relationships, and Renee is a relationship coach, so she'll be able to speak to this in volumes. But communication, or the lack of, is one of the things that really separates people. So Renee, do you have something as far as that word communication?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that you kind of noticed these things are happening, the way you described what happened with that relationship is already extremely intelligent. I mean, you can tell that you've thought about this, and that you really kind of can see what's going on, and that kind of shows your maturity and the place you are in this relationship. It also sounds to me like you don't feel like this is quite the end, but it's a bump in the road. And And that's great perspective to keep too, because that means you are still open to that communication and you're still finding ways or looking for ways to work on that communication to make it better, make it different. Maybe this is just something this other person has to go through to get to a better, healthier place to where you're, closer to already maybe, or something real is happening inside this moment, right? That you guys are both working on and trying to get through it. But it sounds like that you already have a very healthy perspective, that you're kind of already valuing this bump in the road for what it might bring in the terms of benefits, which is wonderful. So kudos on all of that. I think that's great that you have this happy attitude, and you sound like an amazing father.
Oh,
So that's wonderful. I commend you on that. That's great.
I cried for like a year straight. I went through the process though. So thank you for saying that I do sound happy, because I definitely have gone through the process of accepting and being angry and moving forward.
Yeah. So does this situation, is it do you use it as a songwriter? Is it like the creative muse that helps you to identify how you're feeling and your thoughts?
Yes. Like my songs are literal, like either, I guess the word would be like, they're very prophetic. They literally speak to like what I'm going through, and having come from that situation, especially being a man and a man of color. My children are mixed race. So I realized that music speaks to so many different languages and mediums that when I can't necessarily articulate it or communicate it through words, I pull from the music. And all of my music, if you listen to it on Spotify or my website, torinsworld.com, it's literally my life story. And you can like pinpoint from each song, like what was going on. And even if it's personal or I'm observing. And I've always been very observant and in tune as a child. So I keep journals, like I take notes and I like write down what people say, or I observe people going through their emotions. And I like being empathic. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to absorb this and hold on to it. Like, what could I do with it? And very early on, I learned to write songs. So that is my biggest muse, my biggest medium, and it's helped me so much because it helps to get it all out. And it's a great way to say something to someone that may be 3,000 miles away from you or close to you that you can't say.
Yeah.
And
So you're
what sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I wanted Torin to give his website again, because his songs, his catalog of songs is like a scrapbook of his life. And he's welcoming other people into this to see his journey, but also we can learn from that journey. So Torin, can you give your website again, please?
Oh, yes. My website is www.torinsworld.com.
Thanks. Go ahead, Renee. I'm sorry for interrupting.
That's all right. When you were talking about your music and sharing your story so that other people can kind of know, hey, I'm not alone in this. There are other people out there feeling like you. So you're talking to somebody maybe 3,000 miles away. Well, your situation is a unique one as well, being here and having gone through this divorce. Like you said, this is a common thing for people all over the world, right? A lot of people are going through what you've gone through. If you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you were thinking, what you were feeling in that moment when you first realized you kind of have this empty nest?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's coming up on the anniversary. So this time of the year, which like I guess is everybody's favorite, it's kind of become a weird reminder for me, because it's so crazy because my grandmother is a director. So I've grown up in Hollywood show business. And I mean like a working director, like she is a celebrity, but not like what we think. Like she literally works like we do. And so I've been around a lot of people. And so storytelling is enriched in my life, but it's enriched in my life from a way of some of the music, the movies that we have are just crap. And knowing how they're made and that people make it to push it to you to be like, hey, be like this, don't be like this. That is where my music and my personality formed to say, no, things can be like this, or we should do it like this. And so being around all these people, it's like growing up, people would share their stories with me. And I would just be absorbing their stories and having something to say. And I realized that, like, the type of person that I am, like, I have a lot of experiences through people. So when I say something, it's from my heart. It's like, well, this is really what I feel because I've never gone through that. Now I realize that having that personality and realizing that you can make things better or worse for yourself, if that makes sense, and having children. And one of the things that I did see is that I saw more single fathers or more fathers in the household while the women worked and
Oh,
were out trying to do this immaculate thing by themselves. And I found myself talking to people and telling them, like, hey, just the communication and the conversation, it opened me up to, like, people go through these things every day. And I am in a unique position to where I now have reference and background to speak to people who have gone through this. And it took me a minute because the universe started sending me people who were divorced, whose children had passed away. And I was like, oh, how do I, like, tell people that, like, I have kids, but they're not really mine? And then it becomes this whole story. And in me telling the whole story, people were like, you got to tell your story because people don't understand, like, the humanity that it takes to do what you do. And it's like, yeah, I go to bed at 12, I wake up at 5, I make everybody in the house's lunches, including the moms. Everybody got to have a good day. Everybody gets a breakfast. I'm playing my music, I'm singing, everybody gets their heads rubbed, love. So when I'm telling people that, I'm like, I'm helping people realize that I'm not alone, but someone else knows what I'm going through that, like, didn't have to go through what I went through. So that's when I started to realize that I have an empty nest. The kids are, with their mom. They're not, like, with a stranger. They are, now going through the transition where it's their time to come into what type of person I want to be, who do I want to be, and what is the world teaching me. And so for me, like I said, I started meeting a lot of people who had, like, lost children and things like that. So I did a little Zoom, very private, and a few people have asked me to put it up, and I'm, like, considering it. But I did a Zoom meeting where I said, if are going through children loss, divorce, let's meditate. And this is where the cosmic prince comes from and the cosmic connection. But during the pandemic, I was online and I was meditating. And I was encouraging people with their eyes closed because I, like, was so used to being there for my children. And especially because their fathers weren't, I didn't imagine life without them. And I thought, well, if I'm going to take care of you, like, nobody's going to shove me out. But not that it happened like that, but just thinking like that, it's like, wow, there are people who have actually gave birth to these people and they're gone. And so I can't stay in my selfishness that I believed it was so selfish for me to just not get out of bed and not sing and not do anything. And I started talking to people and I realized that we're here to help each other, and that whether your kid goes to college or you never got to meet it, but you carried it, it's like we need people to talk about these things and to love up on each other, because I keep going in my room and I'll see pictures and I'll be like, I don't wish this on my worst enemy. Like, I really don't. And I realized that the memories are what keep it alive. And that's very important because my memories have finally got to a place where I can look at their pictures and not break down and cry. And to wrap that up, a wonderful woman by the name of Elisa Marie shared her story with me about how divorce changed her life and the kids went with the father and she was a single mother. And I remember just the tone in her voice of like, Torin, I miss my kids. And I'll be like, Lisa, I miss my kids too. And we just start talking about them. And those memories actually lifted us up. They didn't keep us down. So that's why I'm here now. And I wanted to share those stories and highlight a few people.
And nice.
Yes, I love that. I wanted to point out that's what I tell people grief is for. You think of grief as such a bad thing, but the truth is that that grief is making you remember those wonderful memories. So they really do become part of who you are, right? It's not just a hole, but it's a hole filled with wonderful memories that you never want to forget, right? Those are part of you. So that grief is an important part of this process. And yes, the anniversaries are difficult, but they're also special, right? Because you get to experience it almost like fresh, almost like, oh yeah, this is important to me. This is why I wear this hole proudly. This is my grief showing plain and simple right here. I love grief for that reason. I mean, it can be a wonderful part of your life if you accept it that way. And you've said it probably 6 times since you got on here with us. You know, it's all in how you look at it, right? It's the perspective that you choose to take with you. Do you want to focus on the bad or do you want to focus on the good? And that makes such a difference. It's great. Yes.
Being intentional and knowing that we're better together. And it's something that I probably say it every single day, more than once, because we are better together. We have more in common than what separates us, no matter what way we look at things. We have more in common and we can help one another. Just like Torin, what you just said about you've experienced this, so you can turn around for the people that are on the same path. They're just below where you are and you can lift them up. And that's what we're here for at Coffee Chat, Redefining the Empty Nest, because we want to change the way people look at their next chapter, that next whatever it is that they're going to do. So Torin, before we close up, we just wondered, what piece of advice would you give to someone that is about to go through an empty nest or is dealing with these emotions? Do you have a little gem that you could share?
All I can say is look towards the skies, you and I, we will find our hope tonight. Sky high, sky high. Just look towards the sky. Always look up, be positive. And I say that because I mean it. And I use that song because I wrote that song with my kids and they're in the video, and my grandparents shot that video. And I will just say, because we know what that day was really about and what we faced as a family. And, don't abuse yourself, love yourself through it. And that's my best piece of advice. And don't feel like you're alone. Then don't feel like you can't share your story, because I really felt like I wasn't worthy to share my story because I didn't go through the process, but I have the experience. So love yourself and continue to have love for those people. I love my kids' mom. I even love their fathers. I love everybody because they're a part of my experience. And so there's no hate, no malice. The sadness turns to joy, and just be happy.
Yeah, and look up. I love it. Thank you so much, Torin, for joining us today and sharing your lovely voice with us, as well as your memories of your children. And you know what? We never mentioned this on air, but your special cup that your sister made for you. Thank you for, yeah, look to the stars, look up, and remember that you're in control and responsible for the next chapter of your life. How do you want to write that chapter? Look up, look to the sky. Thanks for joining us.
If you'd like to be a guest on Coffee Chat, follow the link, be a speaker, and apply. Subscribe and like our videos. You can follow Redefining the Empty Nest on YouTube or join the Facebook group.